Gen 9 has been the most controversial competitive singles generation I've ever seen in my life. With VGC doubles taking over as the primary competitive format that the games are balanced around, Gen 9 in its base state is incredibly unbalanced for 6v6 singles. The power level is getting insane, with absurdly broken new Pokemon and moves being released, made even worse by the new Terra mechanic, which is incredibly powerful in the singles environment. The amount of bans that have happened in Gen 9 is absurd. So let's take a look at every single one of them. The first two Pokemon to ever be banned from Gen 9 OU were both banned at the same time. It was on November 21st, 2022, when Flutter and Houndstone were sent to Pokemon Prison. Flutter may not look that threatening visually, but this is one of the strongest Pokemon competitive singles has ever seen. First of all, it's got a Ghost Fairy typing, which is absolutely elite, two of the best types in the whole game, and incredible stab types as well. Fluttermane's stats are out of this world, with 135 in its special attack, special defense, and speed. Fluttermane's move pull options are incredible, with just about everything you could ask for. Boosting in the form of Calm Mind, Shadow Ball, and Moonblast for attacks, various coverage options. And what really pushed Fluttermane into absurd territory as if it wasn't good enough was its ability Protosynthesis. This ability is shared by all of the past Paradox Pokemon, and what it does is that if Sun is active, it grants a boost to your highest stat. You can also activate Protosynthesis with the new Booster Energy item, which gets consumed and then activates the boost temporarily. With Protosynthesis, Fluttermane can basically achieve a free Choice Scarf in the Sun, and Fluttermane Sun teams were absolutely everywhere. It was to the point where you only win a game if you win a speed tie against the enemy Fluttermane. Trust me, I was there, I played this meta, and it was ridiculous. The other Pokemon that was banned alongside Fluttermane was of course Houndstone, who didn't stay banned permanently, but was banned in the initial metagame because it was, at the time, the only Pokemon that was able to learn the insanely broken new move Last Respects. Last Respects might be the most powerful attack I've ever seen. Last Respects is a ghost type attack that starts at 50 power, and for each time a party member has fainted, this move gains 50 more base power. With 5 fainted allies, Last Respects has an absurd 300 base power, which is so high that Houndstone, with a Choice Band, is able to one-hit KO even Pokemon that resist Ghost, because even taking half damage from a 300 power attack is still a 150 power attack in essence. The only real counterplay to this were normal types, which just kind of suck in Gen 9, there's not many good ones. You could terrestrialize normal to become a normal type, but that's a lot to ask. You're blowing your Terra just to not die to this insanely powerful move with ridiculous base power. Now of course, your whole team has to die to be able to buff the move, but it was to the point where you would just spam moves like Memento and Explosion specifically to feint your team and get the Houndstone in so it could just spam Last Respects. What made Houndstone even more ridiculous was its access to Sand Rush, which grants double speed in the sand. So you run a Tyranitar or a Hippo, something to make Sandstorm, bring in the Houndstone, you're outrunning everything and just clicking Last Respects. And sweeping entire teams unless they have literally a normal type. So yeah, Houndstone was banned initially. A lot of people think that the move Last Respects should have been banned instead, but at the time, Houndstone was the only Pokemon with access to this move, so they chose to ban the Pokemon. This is what they usually do. They don't really ban signature moves because they're part of Pokemon's identities, and if only one Pokemon gets a move, they usually just evaluate that Pokemon. But later on, this ruling would be changed, and we'll get to that in the future. These two bans, by the way, were quick bans, which means the public did not get to vote on these. The Gen 9 OU Council voted on it, and action was taken immediately. This happened a lot in Gen 9 because there were just so many broken things that the due process of voting on every single broken thing would have taken literal years, honestly. We would still be doing suspect tests probably if every single thing was suspected. And Fluttermane and Houndstone were so obviously overpowered that they quick banned them. And you'll notice that early on they quick banned a lot of stuff, and why don't we get on to more examples. Just 5 days later, on November 26th, the following two Pokemon bans occurred. Quick bans to Palafin and Iron Bundle, both banned at the same time. Palafin is sort of an interesting Pokemon design. It's a water type, and in its base state, it has very bad stats. These are very below average and not anything special. But if you simply switch out your Palafin and switch it back in, it transforms into the Palafin Hero form. And this Palafin Hero form basically has legendary level stats. It has an absurd 160 base attack, higher than that of Groudon, 100 base speed, 100 HP, and it even has a pretty high special attack stat. Plus it's a mono water type. That alone is incredible, but what really pushed Palafin to absurd territory was its signature move Jet Punch, which is a water type priority move with 60 power. Much better than the alternative Aqua Jet, which only has 40 power and is still used competitively all the time. So the fact that this Pokemon had not only incredibly high potential stats for an OU level Pokemon, for the OU power level, but also had this incredible water type priority move, and with the assistance of Terra to enable its bulk up sets, options like Taunt to prevent counterplay to its setup, preventing Whirlwind and Roar and Haze, it could just bulk up and spam Jet Punch and even Drain Punch as a form of healing and coverage on the fighting type side. Terra could be used to buff your damage by terastallizing water, or you could Terra Steel was a common option because Terra Steel makes you immune to poison and resistant to grass, which is a type that can hit you. Overall, Palafin was just absurd. It was ridiculous. And it did not take very long at all for it to get banned. Now, a lot of people defended Palafin saying, well, there's a drawback. It starts in the crappy form and it has to switch out. But a lot of people realized very quickly that enabling the Palafin Hero form in 6v6 singles is just really easy. You just lead with Palafin and make a defensive switch and bring Palafin in with a pivoting move or even just directly, and now you're a literal legendary. It's not difficult at all. This was clearly designed more around VGC doubles, where leading with Palafin and switching it out and back in is a much more difficult process because games are quicker and a lot is happening in VGC. In singles, though, it's insanely easy to just get into hero form and start going to the moon. The thing was insanely powerful. And then there's Iron Bundle, the funniest broken Pokemon I think ever. Iron Bundle is Robot Delibird from the future with, for some reason, an absolutely outstanding stat distribution. Also kind of legendary level. The guy has an incredible 124 special attack, an absurd 136 speed, even faster than Flutter, faster than basically the whole game, almost everything. An Iron Bundle is an ice water type Pokemon, and with the combination of Freeze Dry, Hydro Pump, and even pivoting with U-Turn and Flip Turn, Iron Bundle had perfect coverage, because Freeze Dry hits water types super effectively, and these types just cover each other perfectly. There is no switch into Iron Bundle that doesn't take at least big neutral damage. Plus it's outrunning everything, and even if there is a switch in like Blissey, you could just pivot on it with U-Turn. I don't know why they made Robot Delibird so overtuned and powerful, but this Pokemon was crazy. It was just impossible to switch in against when it's on the field. The counterplay was so limited. The counterplay there was didn't even work because it also pivots. So yeah, Iron Bundle was also swiftly banned. I actually loved using Iron Bundle for the very limited amount of time you could. It was like a week or so, but absolutely hysterical Pokemon. But of course, justified in being banned. Ridiculously powerful. After another week and a bit, there was yet another series of quick bans. 3 Pokemon got banned on the same day, and these were Chi-Yu, Annihilape, and Cyclizar, all on the same day. Now what the hell's going on with these Pokemon? Chi-Yu was absolutely running rampant in the brief amount of time it was legal. This is one of the most powerful special attackers Ubers has ever seen, and I know that there were just 2 examples of that moments ago with Fluttermane and Iron Bundle, but Chi-Yu was also insane. This Pokemon is one of the new Ruinous Quartet. It has a massive 135 special attack, 100 speed, and even a solid special defense of 120. And it has the ability Beads of Ruin, which serves to nerf the enemy's special defense. And thanks to this ability, multiplying the enemy's special defense by 0.75, I think Chi-Yu had something like a effective 170 base special attack. The thing had no switch-ins whatsoever. Nothing could safely switch in on Chi-Yu. Even Blissey was getting 2-shot by Terrafire Fire Blast. Resistances were getting destroyed by Overheat. and just the sheer damage output of this. Dark Pulse spam was incredible. Dark is a fantastic offensive type, and Chi-Yu's Terra Dark Pulse was so impossible to come in against. People were so desperate for a Chi-Yu switch in that they were starting to use Darksbun because it is resistant to Dark and immune to Fire. But even this just gets 2-hit KO'd by a simple Psychic, because the damage is so powerful even on a weak, unboosted attack like Psychic. So Specs Chi-Yu was popular. There was also Heavy Duty Boots Nasty Plot Chi-Yu. There was Choice Scarf Chi-Yu to be a bit faster. The thing was ridiculous for a very straightforward reason, sort of shades of Dracovish, isn't it? Just insane damage output that we've never seen before. Even Blissey is not safe. Even like Ting Lu is not safe. These hard special walls are just getting decimated by Chi-Yu. If there's no switch-ins, what the hell are you supposed to do? So Chi-Yu was banned, of course. Then there was Annihilape. Annihilape, another crazy Pokemon. Annihilape, it may seem a bit more balanced than what we've talked about so far. When you first look at it, it has a solid but not insane stat distribution. Great HP, great defenses, high attack, even high base speed, actually. What made Annihilape so powerful was yet another insane signature move. Very similar to Last Respects. It was Rage Fist. In some ways, Rage Fist is even stronger than Last Respects because it doesn't require your team to die to use it. They're very comparable moves. Rage Fist is yet another Ghost-type physical attack that starts at 50 power, and it gains 50 power each time Annihilape is hit at all. So not only by, strong attacks that deal good damage to Annihilape, but even little things like U-turn or resisted hits will power up Rage Fist. And honestly, even just getting hit once and having a 100 power Ghost-type attack is good enough. One more hit and it's 150. If you keep hitting Annihilape and it keeps surviving, it's going to achieve a 300 power attack, just like Last Respects. And of course, to beat a Pokemon, you have to attack it, so you can't really play around this very well. One thing you can do is status it, but the guy has Taunt, so you'd better be faster. Annihilape has Bulk Up to ramp up and keep taking hits, and with Terastallization, people quickly realize that you could Terra Water just as a good neutral defensive type and go full special defense so that you can take the electric hits. And with the help of Bulk Up, Drain Punch, and Rage Fist, you could one-shot most things, and the things that resist Rage Fist are, normal types and dark types. Guess what? Drain Punch is not only stab boosted because you're ghost fighting, it's going to heal you all the way back up, and now it's just even more impossible because you have defensive boosts, full special defense, and attacking Annihilape only makes it more powerful. Taunt is not only stopping status from preventing your sweep, but it is stopping Whirlwind from Ting Lu or something. Haze. Any sort of counterplay possible is just so limited. Yeah, Annihilape was ridiculous. It was crazy. And then there was Cyclizar, who at the time was also the abuser of a insane new Gen 9 Pokemon move that was clearly not made with 6v6 singles balance in mind. It was the move Shed Tail. Shed Tail is a ridiculous new move that is basically Substitute and Baton Pass combined into one. When you Shed Tail, you take half of your max HP in damage. That's a big sacrifice, but it's well worth the cost because you will make a substitute and then pass the substitute to a teammate, giving them a completely free switch in. Because of course, the substitute will shield them from status, and it will shield them from an incoming hit. Cyclizar, with its high speed and access to the ability Regenerator, would heal most of the damage it just took upon pivoting. You take half from Shed Tail, you heal 33% back, and this thing could Shed Tail repeatedly, giving free entry points to allies, and it was outstanding at enabling boost sweepers, like Volcarona, Annihilape. Cyclizar and Annihilape were an insane combo because you just have a substitute on the Annihilape and you start the ramping quickly. Espathra was a common teammate. Anything with a boosting move, basically. Dragon Dance sweepers like Roaring Moon, Swords Dance users like, at the time, Quaquaval. Shed Tail was just insanely powerful at enabling those, and, Baton Pass is banned, right? That's a move that just passes stats and it takes longer to do so. Shed Tail is doing two things in one. Baton Passing a substitute in a single turn, and Cyclizar completely offsets most of the drawback. Now, what's interesting is that at the time there was another Shed Tail user available, Orthworm, but they first banned Cyclizar, thinking that because Cyclizar is fast and has regen, it's less of a problem of the move Shed Tail and more that Cyclizar is built to abuse this move better than anything. But later on we'll realize that this was a short-sighted perspective, and the rules were amended. We'll get to that. The next Pokemon to be banned was Chien-Pao, another member of the ruinous quartet of new legendaries, and a physical attacker compared to Chi-Yu, who is a special attacker. Now, Chien-Pao was initially not seen as problematic in the same way Chi-Yu was, because at least Chien-Pao has a weaker typing of Dark Ice, it is more frail, and more things can check Chien-Pao. But even though it's not as broken as Chi-Yu, it's still basically as broken as Chi-Yu. Chien-Pao has the ability Sword of Ruin, which is the same as Chi-Yu's ability, but for defense, lowering the enemy's defense quite significantly. And with its high 120 attack stat, and compared to Chi-Yu a much higher speed stat as well, Chien-Pao was similarly incredible at that brute force game plan of just Terra Dark, spam Crunch, and nothing can switch in almost. What made Chien-Pao in particular so great though was the fact that it had priority. It has Sucker Punch for Dark type priority, Ice Shard for Ice type priority, and Dark Ice is just an amazing type combo in general. It even has Swords Dance, and has Brick Break too, for fighting coverage against common switch-ins. And Chien-Pao was similar to Chi-Yu, but it was a physical attacker. It's a bit different, it's faster and more frail, but in some ways it's even more powerful because of the access to priority. They're pretty similar Pokemon, and Chien-Pao got banned pretty quickly after Chi-Yu did. The next Pokemon ban happened February 12th, 2023, and it was to Espathra, the infamous Emu. Yet another example of them completely neglecting 6v6 singles balance, because this guy has an insane storm of broken singles concepts. Espathra on the surface seems fine. It's a psychic type, bad typing in modern Pokemon. Its stats are not very good, but Espathra has a ridiculous combination of things that made it an insane sweeper. Espathra has the ability Speed Boost, which is an incredible ability granting +1 speed at the end of each turn for free. Free speed boosts is crazy. We've seen this be broken on Blaziken in the past, and Espathra was very similar, but it was more of a special attacker. Espathra had the combination of speed boost, calm mind, and stored power, and I'm sure that you can probably guess why this combination is so good. Calm mind and speed boost, you could basically view that as extremely similar to Quiver Dance, right? You calm mind and then you get a speed boost anyway. And stored power is a psychic type attack that gains 20 power for each stat boost, including your speed boost that you're getting every turn. So Espathra is able to ramp up incredibly quickly, and this stored power damage gets crazy. Now of course stored power is a psychic type attack, meaning dark types are immune. So Ting-Lu was a good check to Espathra. Terra Dark could be used to check Espathra. But Espathra happens to have Dazzling Gleam as coverage, which is perfect. This hits dark types super effectively. And with Terra Fairy, to not only boost the damage of this Dazzling Gleam, but gain dark resistance yourself, shielding you from such options as Sucker Punch, this made Espathra pretty damn consistent at just snowballing out of control and sweeping everything, outspeeding and outdamaging any Pokemon thrown at it. Another option Espathra used sometimes was Terra Fighting with Terra Blast. Terra Blast is a new move that just matches your highest attacking stat and your Terra type, giving you any coverage you want. And with Terra Fighting, the few things that could come on Espathra were defeated, like King Gambit, Iron Treads, and other such enemies that are trying to resist the Psychic Fairy combo. At this time, it was very hard to identify what was more broken than other things, because Espathra seemed reasonable compared to the other stuff that was legal, right? Like Chien-Pao, Chi-Yu. It was a funny time where, because of just how many broken things were in the game, something like this fell completely under the radar, because Espathra was nothing compared to, Palafin and Iron Bundle. It was like, oh yeah, this thing exists and it's ridiculous. How did we not realize this? It's because other things were more ridiculous before it. And that's going to be a common theme, believe me. The next ban that happened was foreshadowed just a moment ago by me. They decided to ban the move Shed Tail instead of Cyclizar, because they found out that Orthworm using Shed Tail was also incredibly broken. Orthworm is a new Pokemon with the ability Earth Eater, grants ground immunity and heals you if hit by ground moves. It's a mono steel type, it has options like Body Press, Stealth Rock, and it has very high defense. This would run a Citrus Berry to sort of offset the damage it forces upon itself with Shed Tail, and give it more opportunities to use Shed Tail. And even though Orthworm was not as good as Cyclizar at the Shed Tail thing because it didn't have regen. In some ways it was better because it's slow. You take a hit, Shed Tail, Citrus Berry up, and then you're guaranteed to preserve a substitute on whatever comes in. Cyclizar, on the other hand, Shed Tail's fast, switches in, and the enemy Pokemon can break the substitute at least. Orthworm gives a safer entry to sweepers and gives them a guaranteed free turn of setup, which was obviously really broken. Cyclizar could do it, Earthworm could do it, so Shed Tail got banned and Cyclizar was unbanned afterwards. Freed from prison, because it wasn't Cyclizar that was broken, it was just the move Shed Tail. That was the whole problem. So they amended the rules a bit. Now what happened next was that Pokemon Home compatibility for Gen 9 released, and this introduced a bunch of new options to the metagame, so it was a bit of a metagame reset. Some Pokemon from previous generations were now available, new moveset options were available, and the Hisuian Pokemon from Legends Arceus also first became available to use. And with all that, they decided to unban and retest some Pokemon. They unbanned Chien-Pao, now that potentially more stuff existed to check it, you know, might as well see if it's okay this time. And they also unbanned Zamazenta and Zamazenta-Crowned form, which were the box legendaries of the Gen 8 games. This was interesting because Zamazenta was infamous in Gen 8 for being a very underpowered legendary, and it actually got nerfed in Gen 9, losing some of its stats and losing the permanent Dauntless Shield effect that grants defense. So with these nerfs, they decided why not test these guys. What ended up happening after this was that Chien-Pao got rebanned pretty quickly. Surprise, surprise, it was broken again. For the same exact reasons. They checked if maybe it was fine this time, it wasn't. Zamazenta-Crowned got banned because it has very high stats, it has a fighting steel typing, and it was powerful. But Zamazenta remained in OU, and it is still OU to this day, as they deemed it to be a fine presence. In fact, it kind of helped with threats like King Gambit, and, you know, its Dauntless Shield being a nice one-time use physical check option against all the powerful stuff in the game. Yes, it's a legendary, it's got really good stats, it's got, you know, Iron Defense, Body Press, it's got good coverage and stuff, but there were actually enough things that could check this. It wasn't an overwhelming offensive threat itself. The Body Press set is good with Iron Defense, but, you know, that's all in on a fighting type move, which is easy to stop if you have a resistance or a ghost type. It has some physical coverage, but it's pretty limited in that area, and, you know, common Pokemon like Corviknight just check Zamazenta easily. And more Pokemon would come out later that check Zamazenta even more, so yeah, Zamazenta got to stay. Interestingly, an unban happened. Now, before the Pokemon Home metagame was even available, they did some preemptive bans, which is interesting, but I actually agree with all of these. The first one they did was they banned the move Last Respect and unbanned Houndstone. And this is because a new Pokemon called Basculegion was coming out, and Basculegion has access to Last Respects. And, you know, yes, you could have tested Basculegion first before banning it, but it does not take a genius to realize that this guy has, you know, an even higher attack stat than Houndstone. The ability Swift Swim, which is basically the same thing, double speed in the rain. And if Houndstone could click Last Respects and destroy everything with ease, so can Basculegion, obviously. They just said, you know what? Obviously, this is going to be broken, so much like the Shed Tail situation, if there are two Pokemon that can abuse a broken move, and that is the main thing that makes them broken, then the move gets banned rather than the Pokemon. So they banned Last Respect and unbanned Houndstone. You can use Houndstone today, but it sucks, of course, without Last Respects. They also preemptively banned Landorus Incarnate. This is a funny Pokemon because every generation they test it to see if it's broken, and it's broken every time. So they didn't even bother this time. They thought, you know what, we do this every new Pokemon game. We test Landorus, and it's broken. It's got sheer force. It has every coverage move in the world. It's ground flying type. It's gonna be broken. We know this to be true. So they just got ahead of that, and they did not let Landorus ruin the metagame temporarily. Everyone knew it would be broken. They also did the same with Spectrier. Spectrier existed back in Gen 8, and it was legal for a brief time, and then Suspect voted, and the community, you know, decided to ban it through a democratic vote. And, you know, this Pokemon was crazy. It has 145 special attack, 130 speed. The only downside to this Pokemon is that it is extremely limited in its attacking options. It only has Shadow Ball and Dark Pulse pretty much, but now the guy can Terra, and with Terra it can just get Terra Blast. So obviously Spectrier is now able to, not only was it broken just with this limited move pool last gen, now it can patch up its only weakness, so obviously it's going to be broken. They didn't even bother testing it, because there you go. It also has Grimnir, I didn't even mention, which is special version of Moxie, granting a special attack boost if you get a KO. This was the thing that made it snowball like crazy. So there, they preemptively banned Spectrier and Landorus. The first Pokemon to be banned in the new Pokemon Home metagame was Regieleki. It was banned very quickly with a unanimous vote from the council. And this is interesting because just last generation, Regieleki was not that powerful. But much the same reason that Spectrier got banned, Regieleki, thanks to Terra Blast, could overcome its greatest shortcoming. Regieleki is a crazy Pokemon. It's the fastest Pokemon ever released with 200 base speed, which is, nuts. And it has 100 special attack, which is also incredible for such a fast Pokemon. A Choice Scarf Pokemon or a speed boosted Pokemon cannot even outrun Regieleki. Nothing can outrun this in the whole world. But it was severely limited by the fact that it only has electric moves, pretty much. Some other options are like Ancient Power and Swift, which are terrible. So it gets a boost to electric moves with the Mobility Transistor, and it's incredible at spamming electric moves, but a simple ground type just absolutely stonewalls Regieleki. But now it can Terastallize and gain coverage, and with coverage and, 200 base speed outrunning everything, and having perfect Thunderbolt, Terra Blast, Ice coverage, the guy was unstoppable. So Terra Blast and Terastallization, once again, proving to be a pretty broken and powerful mechanic. This is an example of a Pokemon being too much to deal with because it can Terastallize. And this would be another common theme, believe me. The next ban to occur was to Magearna. Not a very surprising one. Magearna is an incredibly powerful mythical Pokemon with the unbelievable Steel Fairy type combination. Many believe this to be the best type combination possible in Pokemon, with absurd levels of, immunities, resistances, and even offensive advantages. Magearna's stats are extremely solid, with fantastic defenses, special attack, and just very well rounded. It has low speed, but it can make up for that with access to Shift Gear. It has the ability Soul Heart, which grants a special attack boost if the enemy faints, whether that's from an attack or from effects like Toxic or Stealth Rock or whatever. Enemy faints, you get a boost. Last gen in Gen 8, Magearna was banned to Ubers, and in Gen 9 it got buffed even further. It has access to Spikes now randomly for more utility. Magearna also benefits insanely from Terastallization, which you'll notice is incredibly good on the boost sweepers. So the guy can, Shift Gear, Calm Mind, Terastallize to make up for its weaknesses, or gain coverage, or just deal more damage with its stab, whatever you want. And these kinds of snowbally Pokemon with boosts get just so buffed by Terra. So if it was broken in Gen 8, of course it's broken in Gen 9. Not much of a surprise. The next bans that occurred were to Urshifu Rapid Strike and Volcarona. Urshifu Rapid Strike was teetering on the edge of brokenness in Gen 8, but it was legal back then. But in Gen 9, they buffed it by giving it the new option of Swords Dance, a very powerful boosting move. And with Terra, what do you know? Terra and a boosting Pokemon was a broken combo. The guy has very good combination of bulk, attack, and speed, plus the ability Unseen Fist, which ignores protection. The enemy click and protect, you just bypass it. Plus the move pool is outstanding on this with Surging Strikes, the signature move that it's a water type attack that always crits, and it's multi-hit that hits 3 times. This bypasses defensive boosts and, focus sashes and sturdy and everything. You got close combat for fighting stab, you got taunt to block whirlwind and other such things. So Urshifu Rapid Strike became broken. Volcarona's ban was kind of a big moment, because this was the first Pokemon ban that was on a previously fine Pokemon historically, except maybe Regieleki, but that was an extreme example. Volcarona was legal all the way up until this point, and it was controversial, of course, because it was abusing Quiver Dance and Terastallization like an absolute maniac this whole time. But it was still just a shocking moment for players who are experienced in competitive Pokemon, because Volcarona has been a part of the game for years, since Gen 5, and it was never banned before. But to be honest, Volcarona is a Pokemon that has always been controversial and always teetering on that edge. Quiver Dance is one of the most incredible ramping boosts in history, raising special attack, special defense, and speed by 1. And Volcarona is infamous for soloing games on its own, even back in Gen 5. 1 Quiver Dance and you can often lose on the spot, depending on what coverage the Volcarona has. Volcarona's biggest drawback has always been its typing. Bug Fire is dreadful, your type's 4 weak to Rock, and Stealth Rock deals half of your health. But when Gen 8 came around, Heavy Duty Boots were an incredible get for Volcarona, allowing it to ignore Stealth Rock completely. Even then, it still had other issues with its typing, general weaknesses, but Terastallization really pushed Volcarona to insane territory, and yeah, Terra Volcarona was on a similar level to things like Espathra and these other ramping threats we've seen. It was insanely difficult to answer, and whatever shortcomings it had were completely patched up by Boots and Terra. It also didn't help that Terra Blast gave it new coverage. You have Terra Blast Ground to hit Heatran and Clodsire and Skeledirge. Terra Blast Fairy and Water are good. You could Terra Grass and use Snap Giga Drain. There was also a bulky Volcarona set with Will-O-Wisp and Roost that just spammed Quiver Dance to the point of no return. The fact that it could abuse all these different Terra types, it was so inconsistent to answer because it can gain so many new coverage options and each Terra type has to be responded to differently. This long controversial Pokemon finally was banned in Gen 9. I was sort of shocked by this when it happened, but in retrospect I think, yeah, this is obviously one of the best and most powerful Terra abusers, and if Terra's in the game, I think Volcarona has to go. It's worth noting, by the way, I didn't mention this, but back in the initial Gen 9 metagame before Home, there was a Terra suspect vote. The mechanic of Terra was voted on, and the community decided to keep Terra back then. It was very divisive, it was very close too, it was close to an even split in the community. It's one of the most divisive issues I've ever seen in my life in competitive Pokemon. Whether we keep Terra in competitive singles or not. Ultimately, the community voted to keep it, and that is maintained to this day, and we're seeing the ripple effects of that. Some people think that, hey, back then we should have banned it, because look at all these problems it's causing. The ability to become a new type and gain all these new options is just unpredictable. Some people like it, though, and the decision-making it adds, because it's dynamic, it can be used in different ways, it allows Pokemon to shine when they otherwise couldn't. It's certainly interesting, gives Gen 9 a unique identity. I quite like it in many respects, but it's obvious that it is game-breaking in many regards with the amount of Pokemon it turns into broken monsters. So yeah, the reality is that Terra is here to stay, and that is having ripple effects, as we can see, of course. The next Pokemon to be banned to Ubers was Baxcalibur, a Pokemon that was, once again, an example of a broken guy flying under the radar because there were so many other broken guys taking the spotlight away. Baxcalibur, when you look at it, you might wonder, why wasn't this banned ages ago? The thing is crazy. It's a Dragon Ice type, which may be a little bit of a rough typing, but the stats are incredible. 115 HP, 145 attack, very well rounded. Thermal Exchange is a crazy ability. You are completely immune to Burn, which is huge for a Dragon Dance sweeper. Will-O-Wisp and Burn in general, very common way to deal with these Pokemon, but Baxcalibur is totally immune. On top of that, if you get hit by a fire move, you receive an attack boost, which also comes up and is pretty good. Baxcalibur has a signature move called Glaive Rush, which is basically better Outrage. It's a dragon attack with 120 power. And the drawback of this move is that on the next turn, you take double damage. But, you know, after that, this effect wears off. So this is better than most drawbacks that come with 120 power moves. Outrage locks you into the move Outrage for multiple turns and then confuses you. That's a significant drawback, and we've still seen that move used just because of the high power of it. Locking into a move sucks because the enemy knows exactly what you're going to do and can punish you. So does confusing yourself. Close Combat is one of the most common attacks in Pokemon, and that has a permanent stat drop associated with it. This is a temporary extra damage effect. You take extra damage and then it goes away. So incredible attack. You also can abuse the new item Loaded Dice, which is an item that causes multi-hit moves to always hit at least 4 times. It's fantastic with Icicle Spear, making that an incredibly powerful option. And Baxcalibur was just a really powerful Dragon Dance threat with his unbelievable coverage combo, limited counterplay because it can't be burned, and you know, what do you know, a Terra abuser with a boosting move. If you Terra Fairy, you are now immune to Dragon, and I think you lose like all of your previous weaknesses except Steel, which is just crazy. And of course there's other Terra type options. Terra Ground was a good one because it boosts the ground type damage. Terra Steel is good defensively. Terra Ground also makes you immune to paralysis, which is relevant. Now I think what really pushed Baxcalibur over the edge though was actually the addition of Ninetales Alola to the game as a teammate, because with Alola Ninetales it sets Snow on the field, which boosts Baxcalibur. In Gen 9 there's a new mechanic. Ice types receive a defense boost in the snow. And Ninetales Alola has Aurora Veil, making Baxcalibur so much more consistent at just spamming Dragon Dance and taking hits. With that sheer bulk, the Terra type to gain defensive neutrality to things, and immunity to burn too. It was so hard to stop a Baxcalibur from just Dragon Dancing and destroying your entire team. So yeah, Baxcalibur was banned. Now at this point, some DLC came out and some new options became available. Most notably, the new Ogerpon forms. Ogerpon is a legendary with 4 different forms, depending on what mask item it's holding. And one of them stood out as the most powerful and most problematic, and that was Ogerpon's Hearthflame form, the Grass Fire type Ogerpon. Ogerpon-Hearthflame has good offensive stats, high speed and attack, same as every other Ogerpon form. It has the mask item, which just grants a 20% boost to all damage. Very strong, very powerful. And its ability is Mold Breaker. Mold Breaker ignores the abilities of other Pokemon, and this is key, because this means that Ogerpon-Hearthflame is an incredibly powerful sweeper. All of the Ogerpon forms have the signature of Ivy Cudgel, which changes type depending on what mask you're wearing, and for Hearthflame, Ivy Cudgel becomes a fire type attack, and it's a really good one with 100 power, 100 accuracy, and a high crit rate. What's brilliant about this is that Mold Breaker means that Flash Fire Pokemon are not immune. You can hit Heatran completely free, and they can't stop it. You are also immune to the effects of Unaware. Unaware is a popular ability to block boost sweepers. Unaware ignores all stat stage changes on the field, so something like Dondozo has always been incredibly solid against all of these broken boost sweepers, but Ogerpon-Hearthflame can ignore that ability and Swords Dance up, maintain that damage because Unaware isn't working, and hit it with Power Whip for super effective damage, totally destroying just about any counterplay. With Trailblaze to boost speed and just this incredible Grass Fire coverage combo, which is nearly impossible to deal with, this was just a crazy threat. Top of that, Ogerpon-Hearthflame actually has a locked Terra type. The Ogerpon forms all have this. They can only Terra into one type, except I think the base form. And that type for Hearthflame is Fire, but when it Terra Fires, it gains a stat, it gains attack. So it's that kind of flexible. Even though you lose the ability Mold Breaker when you Terrastalize with Ogerpon-Hearthflame, you gain attack, you gain extra fire stab, and this can achieve such absurd damage output that you power through everything, and it's very good on the Pokemon you've already boosted on, obviously, especially with Trailblaze speed boost if you have those. So yes, even though Terrastalizing will make you vulnerable to the Unaware Pokemon, what if they don't have any? And what if you've eliminated them already? The flexibility of this and just making you such an effective sweeper was too much to deal with. This was a crazy threat, and it was banned. The next Pokemon to be banned was Ursaluna's Bloodmoon form, and this is a ridiculous bear Pokemon. Ursaluna-Bloodmoon has crazy stats akin to a legendary. Massive HP, massive special attack, incredible defense, and Ursaluna-Bloodmoon also has the absurd ability Mind's Eye. This is similar to the ability Scrappy, and it allows normal and fighting type attacks to be able to hit ghosts. It's an incredibly good ability. On top of this, accuracy can't be lowered, but that's not much of a benefit. That doesn't come up that often. It's a slight boost if they're running Mud Slap or something, but most importantly is the ability to hit ghosts. And Ursaluna-Bloodmoon happens to have the absurd attack Bloodmoon, a 140 power normal type special attack. Is a ridiculous amount of damage, and it has a drawback. You can't use it twice in a row. It's similar to the move Gigaton Hammer. You can use it once and then on the next turn you can't use it. But this is not much of a drawback, to be honest, compared to effects like Hyper Beam or even just stat debuffs. The fact that this insanely powerful stab normal move has a limited drawback and ghosts can't even switch in just makes Ursaluna-Bloodmoon immediately incredibly difficult to answer. On top of that, you have Vacuum Wave as a priority move that Ghost also can't beat. That also makes up for your low speed. The fact that you're a ground type and have earth power is also insanely complementary, because what comes in on normal type attacks? Ghosts? Okay, you don't come in because of Mind's Eye. Steel and rock types. Those are the only ones. Ground hits steel and rock super effectively. So this coverage combo is perfect. Vacuum Wave gives you priority, and then you even have Calm Mind to ramp up and boost. Plus Terra. Have we drilled it in enough that Terra enhances Pokemon with boosts? Because Terra was really good on this too. and it enhanced it incredibly. So yeah, this got banned unsurprisingly. You just look at it. Look at this thing. It's a monster. It's a monstrosity. The next ban to occur was to Roaring Moon, the past Paradox form of Salamence, who up until this point was fine. A little bit controversial, but not so broken that it was ban-worthy. Roaring Moon is yet another incredibly powerful boost sweeper that gets a lot from Terra. It's a Dragon Dark type, with the fantastic combination of Booster Energy and Acrobatics, which synergize great. Booster Energy gets consumed and grants you the Photosynthesis boost. Acrobatics has double power if you have no held item, which you don't because you just consumed Booster Energy. This pairs very well with Terra Flying, not only granting you a immunity to ground and a resistance to fighting, but stab damage on Acrobatics. So that was the combo that Roaring Moon has always used, and there's other sets on Roaring Moon too, like Choice Band, etc. But what really broke Roaring Moon this time around was when it gained Knockoff as an option in Pokemon Home. Before, it just relied on Crunch as its Dark-type stab of choice, which is fine, 80 power, decent damage, but Knockoff is of course much better, not only because it deals more damage with the 1.5x damage effect, but it acts as item removal, making Roaring Moon's counterplay much more limited. Even switching in on a resist is going to be terrible, since you're going to lose your held item, which is a massive deal, especially if you're knocking off a defensive Pokemon like Dondozo. This buff was enough to make Roaring Moon eventually ban-worthy. But it's also worth noting that this was around the time where DLC was about to drop and there was going to be another meta reset, so I think that this was done with the knowledge in mind that Roaring Moon would be unbanned again in the future and retested, which is kind of strange, but yeah, this was not far off from the meta completely resetting. And the next Pokemon ban to occur was to Gliscor on November 23rd, 2023. Once again, this was also pretty close to DLC coming out, and they wanted to address the issue of Gliscor being very overwhelming and dominating the game in the current meta at the time. Gliscor has been around for a long time, since Gen 4, rising to serious prominence in Gen 5 when it received the ability Poison Heal, which is one of the best abilities in the entire game. It means that instead of getting hurt by poison, you get healed by poison, gaining 1/8 of your max HP every turn, which is double what Leftovers heals. So not only are you chip healing significantly with this ability, you are effectively immune to status because you're already poisoned. You're also effectively immune to item removal because you don't need to hold an item to receive the chip heal effect, you just have to be poisoned. Gliscor is an outstanding defensive Pokemon throughout all of competitive history since it's existed, but Gen 9 is where it got buffed significantly, even further, which is crazy. They gave Gliscor Spikes, which was an incredible new option, and Spikes are really powerful in Gen 9 alongside Goldengo, and because Stealth Rock feels worse now, Spikes are kind of the new best hazard in the eyes of many. And Terra is incredible on this because Gliscor does have a good typing, but a targetable typing. Ground Flying is a great typing with a lot to love, but your types for weak to Ice, you're weak to Water, which are common types. With Terrestrialization, you get incredible defensive benefit, becoming Water type is popular, as, you know, Mono Water has been a great defensive type since forever. Fairy is another popular one. Another thing people did on Gliscor was Terra Normal, with the combination of Swords Dance and Facade. Facade is a normal type attack that doubles in power if you are statist, and Gliscor is statist all the time if it activates the Toxic Orb. So with Terra Normal plus the incredibly high power Facade getting doubled and Swords Dance to boost you further, this was a win condition, and Normal being a good neutral typing is also good on a Pokemon that is status immune, chip heals significantly. Gliscor was pretty broken. It's kind of crazy that this got buffed, and it's another example like Volcarona of a Pokemon teetering on the edge of brokenness for a long time and just getting a push that made it too much, at least at the time. But of course, this would be retracted soon after when the metagame reset would happen as DLC 2 came out. If you're confused, so is everybody else, but that is the turn of events that did happen. And this was the final ban of that DLC, moving into another metagame reset where a bunch of unbans were about to happen. And the next ban after this was on November 19th, the ban of Sneasler, who was a problematic Pokemon for a while up to this point, but it got pushed over the edge by something I'll explain in a second. First, let's explain what it is that Sneasler does itself. Sneasler is a fighting poison type with very good offensive stats. 120 speed, 130 attack, and decent bulk too, considering the speed and damage output. Sneasler has the outstanding ability Unburden, which is a popular ability in competitive singles throughout history on Pokemon like Hawlucha. Unburden will grant you double speed on held item loss. You lose the boost if you switch out, but it's very popular to use this with consumable item, like a citrus berry, or some of the gem items that used to exist in Gen 5. Now the best way to actually activate Unburden, and this was popular in Gen 7 on Hawlucha, is with these terrain seeds. Grassy Seed, for example, will activate if Grassy Terrain is active. So if Grassy Terrain's active, Sneasler switches in, it'll consume its Grassy Seed and gain a defense boost. Not only getting that stat boost, but proccing Unburden, so it now has double speed. So Rillaboom and Sneasler were great teammates. Rillaboom makes the Grassy Terrain to proc the Sneasler Grassy Seed activation, and therefore the Unburden. And Sneasler is incredibly strong for an Unburden Pokemon. Hawlucha was used back in Gen 7, and it has way worse stats than this. Sneasler's stats are really good even without Unburden, and now it's outrunning everything. It has a great move pool too with Acrobatics, which is great when it's, wanting to consume an item anyway. It has Stab Close Combat, Night Slash for coverage. And it also has this move right here, which is, in my opinion, one of the worst Pokemon move designs in history. This is the move Dire Claw, which is an 80 power poison move exclusive to Sneasler. And this move has a 50% chance to inflict one of 3 status effects, either poison, paralysis, or sleep. The variance on this move is unbelievable, and the high proc chance make it just ridiculous at fishing for status. So Dire Claw is just a move that could rob games from people, because if you happen to put an enemy to sleep after attacking them, what can be done? They can't act. You can even get another Swords Dance boost. And this is just poison stab anyway. It's not like it's a terrible move, It's not like you're sacrificing a lot to get this effect. It's a solid attack regardless. So the fact that it can just put you to sleep is so crazy. And there were some people calling to ban Dire Claw in particular and keep Sneasler, or just ban Sneasler because Dire Claw is uncompetitive and can just sleep you randomly. But eventually Sneasler ended up getting banned because Rillaboom, funnily enough, got buffed so much that running this Rillaboom-Sneasler combo became so much better. In the DLC, Rillaboom once again received its option Grassy Glide, which it didn't have in Gen 9 up until that point, and Grassy Glide was its main attack back in Gen 8, if you remember. It's a priority attack that only works in grassy terrain. It has been nerfed this time around to 55 power, but it's still incredibly good, and it makes Rillaboom much better and more worthwhile to use, as priority is really good in Gen 9 at answering speedy threats and just eliminating things and being more threatening in general. So because Rillaboom became so much better and more desirable on teams, the Rillaboom-Sneasler combo got better, and Sneasler was finally enough of a problem to get banned. I don't care who you are, this is a ban that was being celebrated in the streets. This is one of the most ridiculous and frustrating Pokemon I've ever had the displeasure of playing against in competitive Pokemon history. Good riddance to Sneasler. So you're probably seeing why Gen 9 OU has been so crazy and hard to balance so far, with not only the power level increasing and all of these insanely broken concepts for 6v6 singles that have come into existence because the format is not really considered in balancing at all. Moves like Last Respect, Shed Tail, just obviously insane in 6v6 singles. There's also Terra. There's also constant metagame resets, because not only is Pokemon Home introducing a million things that change the whole meta. So, okay, now we have to unban stuff. There's 2 waves of DLC. So there was a metagame reset when DLC 1 came out, and now DLC 2 is out. And yet again, they have unbanned a bunch of stuff, some that were only recently banned. So DLC 2 releases, and they have unbanned Volcarona, Gliscor, Roaring Moon, and amazingly for the first time ever, Darkrai is unbanned and is OU. This is kind of crazy, because Darkrai's been Ubers for years, since Gen 4, but yes, they unbanned Darkrai, but this is actually something people have wanted for a long time, because Darkrai got severely nerfed a couple generations ago when its signature move Dark Void was nerfed from having 80 accuracy down to 55 accuracy. So the whole reason to use it, being that it's fast and has an accurate sleep move, was no longer very consistent because its sleep move is 55 accuracy, which is insanely risky to use. So Darkrai has not been very good in the Ubers format in a long time, so they thought, why not test it in OU? It's been long enough. The power level in general is increasing. Is Darkrai even that crazy these days? So that was the idea. This would end up being perhaps a mistake in the eyes of some, as we'll see later, but it was a decision they made. And yes, they also retested Volcarona, Gliscor, and Roaring Moon in the new meta. The first Pokemon to get banned in the new DLC was actually the signature Pokemon of the DLC, Terapagos, the all-new legendary. Terapagos is kind of an insane Pokemon. It has a unique mechanic where it starts in this baby form with really bad stats, but it's bizarre and this really confused me. This baby form is just for show. As soon as Terapagos switches in, it transforms into Terastal form immediately. And I thought, okay, is this because maybe like Wheezing Galar can block this from happening? Like a cool little interaction where you can keep Terapagos in its baby form? No, it's immune to any kind of disruption. It's immune to any kind of ability cancellation effect. It just always transforms you into the actual form. So, I don't know, I guess they made this guy for merchandise because they wanted to sell a cute little turtle. It's fair enough, I guess, but it's just a very bizarre mechanic that is exclusive to this guy and doesn't do anything except for, like, confuse the hell out of me. So, yeah, so let's go ahead and edit the code here and turn this into what it actually is when you send it out. Terapagos Terastal form, who is much more turtle-looking. Now, this is a normal type Pokemon with very well-rounded stat distribution. Solid all around, with 95 HP, great defenses, 110 in each, solid special attack, and even pretty good speed, just incredibly well-rounded. And this guy has the ability Terra Shell, which is one of the strongest abilities I've seen in Pokemon in a while. Terra Shell is really good. If you're at full HP, all attacks taken have half effectiveness. It's as if every attack used is not very effective, even fighting type attacks. The only exception is if you're immune already, so ghost type attacks, which you're immune to, will still deal 0 damage, but fighting type attacks, or, you know, any other thing that would otherwise be neutral, is going to be resisted by Terapagos. This is kind of like a multi-scale, but even better, because, you know, a Dragonite at full HP can still take a lot from an Ice Beam. Even though it's halving the damage, it still does good damage, but this makes it not very effective. What's also insane about this is multi-hit moves won't break it. So if you use a multi-hit move, every single hit of the multi-hit move will be not very effective. So it shields you from that. Multi-scale, on the other hand, the first hit will break multi-scale, and then each subsequent hit will deal full damage. So Terapagos sidesteps that completely, and this was obviously incredible for a setup sweeper. You know, much like Dragonite, you got Rock Polish, Calm Mind, and also the new move Terra Starstorm, which is a normal type special attack with 120 power. And then when you Terastalize to the Stellar type, this move becomes a Stellar type attack. Please forgive me because I have to explain the stupidest Stellar type again, the worst mechanic ever that nobody likes. But the Stellar type is a Terra type that doesn't actually function like a normal Pokemon type at all. You know, usually you Terastalize and you become like Fire type, and then you gain the defensive properties of the Fire type. You maintain your old stab types, but functionally you are a Fire type now. Stellar doesn't actually change anything about your Pokemon defensively. You still are weak to fighting, immune to ghost, because you're a normal type. So Terra Stellar is just like an aesthetic type. It doesn't actually change your typing. You have all the same defensive and offensive traits of your typing, but you gain this weird temporary offensive boost. If you use a move after becoming a Stellar type, it will have a 20% damage increase once. So if you use Ice Beam here, for example, it'll deal 20% more damage the first time you use it after you Terra Stellar. And if you use a move that is the same type as you, it will have a higher damage increase of 2 times damage. But that also only happens once. On top of this, you also have access to Stellar type moves. Other Pokemon can use Terra Blast to become a Terra Stellar. Terra Blast? Forgive me for saying all this crap. But it's all true, all of it. It's all true. And Terra Starstorm here, as designated in the text, becomes a Stellar type attack. What does that mean? Stellar type attacks are neutral against everything. They are neutral against everything. And they are also super effective against any enemy that has terastallized. So no matter what type they are, if they have terastallized, it deals double damage. So this is really good because it's neutral damage against everything, making it insanely spammable. And it is also good against enemies that have Terrad. So Terapagos Terrestrial form could do this. And I haven't even mentioned yet that Terapagos also changes into a different form when it terastallizes Stella. It turns into this complete monstrosity, which is just gross to look at. Weird. What even is that? Whatever it is, that's what it becomes. It gains, box legendary level stats here with 160 HP now, 130 special attack, same stats everywhere else, but the HP and special attack are significantly increased here when it terastallizes Stella specifically. Doesn't work with any other Terra type. And then it gains this ability here, Terraform 0, which ends the effects of weather and terrain once per battle. So as soon as you Terra Stella, you gain this ability, and if there is weather active, it will dissipate. If terrain is active, it will dissipate, and that's what that does, which is kind of useful sometimes. Maybe you're up against a Swift Swim Pokemon, you want to outrun it, you get rid of the rain. So yeah, because of this incredibly powerful Stellar form with insanely good box legendary stats and the spammable nature of Terra Starstorm and the incredible ability in its previous form, it's obviously broken. Most people thought it would get banned, but they tested it briefly. And it was too powerful, which is to be expected. It's the, the big new legendary, but yeah, it got banned. Now the next thing to get banned was not a Pokemon or a move, but an entire mechanic. And this is actually the most controversial ban in Pokemon that I've seen in quite a while. The Terra discussion was divisive, but Terra didn't end up getting banned. This was a ban that had the community very divided. And that was an entire ban on sleep-inflicting moves. All sleep-inflicting moves were banned completely. And this was partially spurred on by the fact that Darkrai was legal to use in OU for the first time, and yes, even though Dark Void was nerfed. And Dark Void is inaccurate now. Darkrai still has the move Hypnosis with slightly more accuracy, and the reality was that a fast Pokemon with a sleep-inflicting move like this is just really, really powerful. I mean, obviously, Darkrai was Ubers in past generations for this reason, and it was good there. Even though Hypnosis is inaccurate and risky to use, doesn't change the fact that if it does land, it is incredibly strong, and there's very little you can actually do about it. Darkrai outruns a large chunk of the metagame, completely prevents you from acting, and then chip damages you when you're asleep because of its ability Bad Dreams. From there, it can get a nasty plot, and the fact that it can Terra gives it defensive advantages that it never had before, and it can shield itself from incoming hits, boost up further, and sweep from there. So this was a problem, because it kind of turned the game into a casino where you just have to hope you don't get hit by Hypnosis. And then people started running Hypnosis on other stuff, like Iron Valiant gets it. People were using this before, but I think the Hypnosis mania caused more people to be running it, realizing how good it is to have Hypnosis on something fast. Iron Valiant is a Paradox Pokemon, meaning it gets booster energy, and it gets a speed boost from booster energy. So it's really fast, it can Hypnosis things, use that for Calm Mind setup, or just to, shut something down. This was still controversial though, because it was only sleep being a problem on these Pokemon. Sleep was okay before, and in other contexts it is balanced. Now the example people bring up is Amoonguss. Amoonguss is a Pokemon that is very slow, has very poor stats, has Regenerator to make up for that, and good typing, but it's very limited in what it can do. It is exploitable. It's slow, frail, it can be one-shot by a lot of stuff. But its saving grace is that it has Spore, the accurate sleep-inflicting move. And even that is not 100% guaranteed to do stuff, because Spore has counterplay now. You can switch in Grass types and they're immune to Spore. You can switch in Garganical and it's immune to Spore, Goldengo, etc. So Amoonguss never felt broken with a sleep-inflicting move. It was only Darkrai and Iron Valley, these fast Pokemon that have these sleep-inflicting moves, and lowering the accuracy of these moves is not a good way to balance it. It's just broken when something fast gets a sleep move. Amoonguss isn't broken because it's not that fast. Same with Breloom. Breloom's faster than Amoonguss, but it's still slower than most things in the game, so that balances it, even though it has Spore. It also sucks that Hypnosis doesn't have the Grass-type counterplay. Grass types can't come in on this, and Goldengo won't work because Dark Pulse threatens Goldengo. So yeah, the counterplay wasn't as fantastic. So a lot of people think banning Sleep entirely was a bit of an overcorrection to the problem that this scenario was causing, but I guess at the same time there was no clean solution, because what are you going to do? Ban specifically Hypnosis on Darkrai? Like, that's a complex ban, which you could do, but it's a bit weird to do that. It's not really done in the past. I personally think they could have just banned the move Hypnosis, because Spore and Sleep Powder have more counterplay and are on less broken things. So Hypnosis was actually the problem, and they could have done that. I would have been in favor of that, but they went with just banning Sleep entirely across the whole generation, which a lot of people were not happy about. Not only because in OU there were balanced Sleep users, but also in lower tiers. Darkrai and Iron Valiant were not available, but it still got banned in lower tiers too. It was a universal Gen 9 ban. So yeah, and there's also the whole debate about whether sleep clause should exist or not, which is a mod that means you can't put more than one thing to sleep. That's existed on simulators for a very long time. It's existed on Showdown, and it's inspired by Pokemon Stadium, which had it as a rule in the game. I really wish they would just add that as a custom rule you could put in Pokemon, because it's such a good way to balance sleep, but yeah, it was inspired by Pokemon Stadium, and it's just been a thing in Showdown for years, even though it's not cartridge accurate. There is no sleep clause on actual Pokemon. But it's a good way to balance sleep, because if you could spam sleep, it would be crazy. I don't know. I've had this debate enough. I've got a dedicated video about it if you're curious. I still think it was a weird choice, and it's kind of crazy that there was no suspect vote or anything for it. But it's been in place for enough time now, and it's probably not metagame ruining or anything. It's just that the process of how it was done is what I disagree with. It didn't ruin Gen 9 or anything, but this is the only Gen 9 ban I have real qualms with, to be honest. Every other one I understand perfectly fine. This one was kind of strange. But it happened anyway, so what can we do? The next ban to happen in the metagame was to a Pokemon again. We'll return to normalcy. We're banning Pokemon. February 18th, 2024, Archaludon was banned. Archaludon, a new pseudo-legendary Pokemon, evolution for Duraludon, that was really, really good. Let me walk you through it. First of all, incredible stats, massive defense, pretty good speed for something so bulky, and an incredible special attack stat. It also has a very good defensive typing of Steel Dragon. Archaludon also has the amazing ability Stamina, previously only available on the Pokemon Mudsdale. Could this mean that Archaludon is horse adjacent in some sense? We'll never know. We may never know. But regardless, Stamina is an ability that raises your defense by 1 every single time you are damaged by a move. Insanely good ability that just allows you to ramp up defense by simply sitting there and taking attacks. Also incredibly good with Terra, because you change to a different type that resists the thing that would have hit you, and you gain defense, making you harder to kill. Archaludon also has Body Press, which is fantastic to take advantage of Stamina, a move that deals damage based on your defense stat. It's incredibly convenient for mixed coverage to hit special walls like Blissey and Ting-Lu. What made Archaludon really insane, if everything else about it wasn't insane enough already, was this move here, Electro Shot, signature move on Archaludon. This move has 130 power, raises your special attack by 1, and then hits on turn 2, kind of like the move Meteor Beam. Except in the rain, you can bypass the charge. Usually this takes 2 turns to execute, but in the rain, it goes through instantly. This is kind of like a way better version of Solar Beam, not only outstanding electric coverage, even out-damaging Thunder with its massive 130 power, but letting you ramp up your special attack. Archaludon made Rain teams the best team archetype in the game, and the meta at the time was Rain Spam, Rain Mirrors, because Archaludon in the rain with Electro Assault was just way too good. It ramps up its special attack. Even if you switch in a immunity, you still get the special attack boost. When you try to hit Archaludon, it gains defense, making it even harder to eliminate. Giving it defense gives it Body Press, which deals more damage to the few things that could wall it, Blissey, Ting-Lu, etc. And then it just destroys you with whatever coverage it's choosing to run. yeah, Pokemon that just is a bit overtuned, naturally boosting itself with everything, attacking and ramping at the same time, gets a lot out of Terra, is just a bit too powerful stats-wise. I think it was a perfectly reasonable ban, and this thing was turning the whole meta into rain mirrors, so it got banned. The next ban was to Volcarona again. I think the first one was a quick ban, but this one was a suspect vote. So first one, the public could not vote on it. This one, they could, and they all majority voted to ban the thing. For exactly the same reasons. It was using Quiver Dance and Terra and just sweeping themes. I think we can breeze past this one. We've already been through it. Unbanning Volcarona turned out to be a mistake. Props to them for at least testing the guy briefly, but unsurprisingly it was broken again for the same exact reasons it was the first time. The next ban was to Gouging Fire, a more recently released Paradox form that came out in DLC. This was Paradox Entei from the past with a big hat on. An absurd Pokemon all around. It's called Gouging Fire. It is Entei with a hat. Has Pokemon jumped the shark? Some are saying yes. Some think there's artistic merit to something like Gouging Fire. Some think that this is actually really smart and they did a good job. Regardless, this was really good in OU. It's a Fire Dragon type. Great typing with few weaknesses. I think just one weakness to ground. Am I stupid? No, rock as well. Ground and rock weakness, but very few weaknesses. Immunity to fire. Typing that covers each other because you are neutral to fairy, unlike most dragons. You are neutral to water, unlike most fires. So very complementary typing. Gouging Fire has very well-rounded stats, high HP, good defense, solid special defense speed, and attack as well. And Gouging Fire is a Dragon Dance Pokemon. And Gouging Fire could be used in a few different ways. Dragon Dance was probably the most popular with booster energy or heavy-duty boots and pretty simple sets, stab moves, etc. Gouging Fire would sometimes use Breaking Swipe, which is a dragon type attack that lowers the enemy's attack by 1. This would let it 1v1, especially after terastallizing. It would let it 1v1 things and then you could Morning Sun back up and keep your guy healthy for future sweeps and like farm things by nerfing them a lot. Kind of funny. You have the move Heat Crash, which is great fire stab, weight-based fire damage. And Gouging Fire was also used with just a choice band on Sun teams. This is notably actually the first fire-type past Paradox Pokemon, which is huge because all these guys get a boost in the sun. And so Gouging Fire's boost feels all the more powerful since its main stab type is getting boosted by the sun too. So a choice band Gouging Fire, clicking Flare Blitz or Heat Crash or whatever, it's obviously really strong. In that this guy has like pretty modest stats compared to some other past Paradox Pokemon, only 115 attack. It's actually a lot of attack, but for Gen 9 standards, it doesn't feel like that much. It was still just another case of Terra making things too unpredictable, because this thing had too many possible Terra types to cover, too many different sets to cover. Moveset options, that means it checks one thing and not the other. It's the same problem that Baxcalibur suffered from Volcarona. What do you know? Terra plus boosting moves plus a lot of options equals guy is way too broken, there's no reliable check to it, and it gets banned eventually. The fact that this keeps happening is a common argument in the department of Terra should have been banned all that time ago because it would have prevented all of this. It's kind of true. I mean, how many Pokemon in this video are just guys with boosting moves that use Terra to ignore all their weaknesses and ramp to the point where they're unstoppable? It's crazy how many times this has happened, and maybe Terra is the source of all of it. It's a fair argument. At the same time, Terra gives the gen unique flair. And at this point, if you ban Terra, you would have to undo every single ban in the whole thing, and I don't think anybody wants to reban a bunch of stuff again at this point. I think that no matter how you feel, we're probably stuck with Terra. It is too late. If Terra's the problem, I think it's too late, because if you unban Terra now, we are going to be in a hellscape for a while. But yeah, Gouging Fire, yet another Dragon Dance Terra fella. What do you know? The next ban to happen was Kyurem, and this was actually a bit of a dramatic scenario because Kyurem ended up getting unbanned like a second later. Allow me to explain why. So the reason Kyurem was being suspected in the first place and was considered a problem in the meta is because It's a very diverse threat that is difficult to check. Kyurem is a Dragon Ice type, a legendary from Gen 5 with fantastic attack, special attack speed, bulk, legendary level stats of course. It has great special attacking options like Ice Beam, Freeze Dry, Earth Power, Draco Meteor on this set for example. It also has great physical attacking options like Dragon Dance to boost itself up, Scale Shot with Loaded Dice combo, which is really good, multi-hit moves plus loaded dice. Icicle Spear as well. Now it can use Terra Blast to gain physical coverage like Terra Ground or Terra Fire. It can do both. Mixed Dragon Dance. It has physical attacks, Dragon Dance Icicle Spear, and it has Freeze Dry to destroy Dondozo. You can see where Kyurem is kind of similar to other threats with too many options to reasonably cover. When you see a Kyurem, you go to one thing, it might beat it because if it's the special set, you go to a special wall that answers it. Oh crap, it's the physical set and I died. Or you try to do a mid-ground or call it out. Oh, it's the mixed set. It Dragon Danced and Freeze Dried me. I'm dead again. So yeah, Kyurem, kind of annoying to play against. But here's what's crazy is that the ban vote happened. It was a majority. The guy got banned. And then it turned out that the vote was rigged the whole time. And okay, so first let me explain how suspect votes work if you're not aware. To participate in a suspect vote, you got to make a new Pokemon Showdown account with a specific name to show that you're participating in the suspect vote, like a little acronym and then your name. And then you have to achieve a certain rating and GXC, which is another measure of win rate or whatever, to be able to participate in the vote. So you got to be a good player and be able to achieve that on the Gen 9 OU ladder to be able to vote. So what happened was, I believe what it was that one guy was getting the requirements to vote on a bunch of alt accounts and then distributing them to Smogon users so that they didn't have to do the work themselves. So a bunch of people were voting on this when they were actually using an alt account that this one guy was farming. So that guy, I guess, just got the requirements multiple times because he really hated Kyurem and wanted a ban and just gave alt accounts to a bunch of people so that they could vote in favor. So obviously that is not allowed on Smogon. You can't just use someone else's account and vote. And they don't want to encourage that, right? Why would you want like one guy to just keep farming alts and then he could rig the vote to whatever he wants? That's a little ridiculous. So obviously everyone who did that, I think, got banned from Smogon. The votes were retracted. And then with the retracted votes, it was just lower than the majority required to ban Kyurem, so it got unbanned. And there you go. Kyurem is now walking free. It's allowed in OU because it was falsely banned the first time. And funny thing is, a lot of people want them to do this again because Kyurem is still causing problems, but I don't know if they will because of that whole fiasco. I don't know if they will do it again, but isn't that interesting? I mean, what if... I think some of the people that took those alt accounts were good players that probably could have gotten requirements if they wanted to, but they were just lazy and didn't want to, which is kind of funny. So what if they just all did? Then Kyurem would be banned legally by due process and all that. But because those guys were lazy and didn't want to play and just got alt accounts, the ban didn't go through. It was, those votes were removed, and what do you know? Kyurem is here to stay. Kyurem has some positive traits in the meta. It is very good against Stall, so that's good in some people's eyes. It's not always fun when Stall is too powerful, so Kyurem is a positive matchup against Stall, and generally a fun threat to use because of all its diversity, and you can sort of make plays with it, and it's pretty cool. To play against, it can be frustrating. It's a great Terra abuser too. But at least it's Dragon Ice, its typing sucks, it's incentivized to use non-boots items a lot of the time, meaning Stealth Rock ruins its life. So people have adapted to it, and I've accepted its presence in the tier. Some still want it gone, but what are you going to do? What happened next was kind of fun. They decided after a very long time to retest Palafin and unban it. Because remember, all the way back when Palafin first got banned, the metagame looked totally different. Palafin was banned at a time when it was very early on, and there were extremely limited options. There was no DLC yet, there wasn't even Pokemon Home yet to bring past gen Pokemon into the game, and the Hisuian Pokemon and all that, so Palafin got banned at a time when the metagame looked extremely different. So maybe now, Palafin will be okay. Yes, it has 160 attack, yes, It's crazy. It has Jet Punch and Bulk Up, Drain Punch, Taunt, all this stuff. Choice band sets, moveset variety. But, you know, there's Ogerpon Wellspring in the metagame now, who is an incredible switch into Palafin, in theory, with Water Absorb and outrunning it and hitting with Power Whip. There's more defensive Pokemon in general, like defensive Zapdos is sort of helping against Palafin. There's a lot of new stuff. But the retest was not successful. Palafin was legal again briefly, but to the surprise of not many, it was still a bit too overwhelming. With that Jet Punch and the Bulk Up and the Taunt and the Set variety, it was even running, I believe, Acrobatics and like maybe Grassy Seed or some consumable item so that it could 1v1 Ogerpon Wellspring, who everyone thought Ogerpon Wellspring would be the big thing to keep Palafin in check, but turned out the guy had an option to hit it. It just didn't have a reason to use it before because there was no Ogerpon Wellspring. But now Acrobatics hits Ogerpon Wellspring super effectively, so even that isn't a solid check. So yeah, that was fun for some time, but yeah, the retest was not successful. Palafin unbanned and then swiftly banned again. And the final ban so far, the most recent ban to happen, was April 1st, 2025. So it's been 2 months since a ban, and it was to Roaring Moon again. Remember, Roaring Moon was banned after it received knockoff, got unbanned, and actually was allowed to exist for quite a while before getting banned again for, yes, basically the same reason as before. It's a Dragon Dance guy with Terra. There were some adaptations, like people started using this set right here, Terra Fairy, with Terra Blast, no acrobatics, and Covert Cloak, which allowed Roaring Moon to be immune to Scald Burn from Alomomola, and also Malignant Chain Poison from Petulant. So this was a cool adaptation that allowed Roaring Moon to have the incredible coverage combo of Fairy and Dark, gain a good defensive typing, have Roost, and then also not be susceptible to a lot of counterplay to it at the time, which was, you know, Alomomola going for a Scald Burn, Petulant getting that Malignant Chain, and other stuff too, like random secondary effects that can happen. And so, yeah, it turned out Roaring Moon was incredibly resilient, even in new metagame with new stuff to check it and pressure it. It just adapted and was broken all over again. So yeah, Roaring Moon banned again. And that is the final ban so far. I think it is likely that more bans will happen because people are still complaining about stuff and it seems like it will never end. I think that Gen 9 OU now is much more stable and reasonable than it was in the past, and playing this metagame actively for its whole lifespan so far has been a roller coaster, let me tell you. With absolutely ridiculous threats like Chi-Yu, Chien-Pao, Flutter, Palafin, Iron Bundle, Annihilape, Espathra. And a lot of these are not even legendaries, they're just regular Pokemon that for some reason are just insanely broken. Because they are not designing things around 6v6 singles anymore, if they ever were. And if you're a casual player who is sort of frustrated with all of this stuff happening and you don't even know that a team that you were using last week is illegal now and just the amount of stuff that's constantly shifting, I can understand the frustration a little bit. I can understand that because it is confusing to follow all of this, especially because the meta keeps resetting. And, you know, you might think that Gliscor is still banned, but they unbanned it. You might be surprised that Zamazenta's here now, Darkrai's here now, but it can't use Hypnosis. It's kind of hard to follow. And Smogon has always wanted, you know, a balanced competitive Pokemon format in OU to the greatest extent that they can achieve that while also reducing the complexity of the rule set. But in some people's eyes, the rule set is already complex. It's already extremely complex. I also think that they've been dealt an impossible hand here. Some people are very negative towards the competitive singles community despite the fact that it has a long history. It was once the best way to play competitive Pokemon before the developers ever supported official VGC events. There was a time back in, you know, Gen 3 and 4 when battle simulators were competitive Pokemon because actually playing competitive Pokemon tournaments was kind of a joke. Grinding for real teams was not a thing people did, and it was insanely time consuming and a massive barrier to entry, and there wasn't even much reward for doing so, whereas, you know, playing on a simulator like NetBattle was much more convenient and tenable. So it's a bit insulting to this community that has existed for years and years and years to say that they should just stop existing or something. Some people have that attitude because VGC is the big thing now, and Screw you guys for playing a different format. Why would you play 6v6 singles when the developers don't care about it? I don't know. This gen has definitely felt unique in that there has been so much more action and swift action and constant bans. It's never been like this before. And I think this was needed, because without such action being taken, I think that Gen 9 OU would be a complete casino. It would be ridiculous. Imagine if everything I've mentioned in this video was legal. It would be the most chaotic metagame in history. A lot of people think it's a shame that this stuff is illegal in OU, but there are formats where many of these threats can exist, like the all-new Ubers UU and Ubers itself, where plenty of these Pokemon are viable. I think it's very dramatic when people speak about Smogon as if they are Big Brother trying to silence you and stop you from using Annihilape. That's a bit stupid, because it's just a fan format. You could just play Ubers UU or Battle Spot singles if you want. No one's stopping you from using Annihilape against your friend in the schoolyard or whatever they're doing these days. This is just a fan format that some people want to play, run by volunteers. No one's getting paid to ban Volcarona. That's just someone trying to make OU more balanced for the community of people who play it. It's a bit silly to get that dramatic over it. Disagreeing with decisions made is fine, but be normal about it, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Be normal, please. There's people making comments like Smogon is rotten to the core and they're corrupt. No, it's just a Pokemon fan community. It's not that serious. Anyway, thank you for watching, folks, and I'll catch you later.